Log entry number 1. High Commander Vralok, Fleet Commander, Kirin Ascendancy. The stars stretched endlessly before us, a tapestry of cold brilliance broken only by the looming shape of the Crathalia, my flagship. Behind it, the combined might of the Kirin 1st Expeditionary Fleet hung in silent formation, 200 warships, their matte black hulls absorbing the light of distant suns. The plan was simple: advance into the unclaimed systems, establish dominance, and subjugate whatever primitives we encountered. When the scouts identified the human systems as the weakest link in this region, the Council was elated. This campaign would bolster our borders without effort, or so we believed.
High Commander, initial probes are returning,
announced Kael'tan, his posture rigid at my side, his broad slate-colored shoulders squared in what he believed was deference, but always came off as nervous tension.
Reports suggest minimal resistance on the outer colonies.
Minimal resistance? Gorthon interjected with a snort, his tendrils curling in derision. You see? I told you. Vralok, humans are an afterthought. Let's press forward and... Kael'tan's claws flexed, a slight twitch of irritation.
Strategist Gorthon, I'm providing my report.
I waved a hand to silence them both, eyes fixed on the holographic display before me. It showed our fleet advancing like a blade through the system. Gorthon's eagerness was expected, his penchant for bluster an occasional irritant. But today, I shared his anticipation. There was no glory in conquering primitives, but the campaign would cement our legacy. Advance at half speed, I ordered, keeping my tone calm. Deploy skirmishers to flush out their scouts. Humans have been clever in the past. Let's not be caught off guard. Kael'tan nodded, a flicker of approval softening his sharp features. Gorthon muttered something under his breath, but obeyed. The first sign of trouble came 3 hours later.
High Commander,
Kael'tan said, his tone clipped.
We're detecting a single vessel, approaching at high velocity.
A vanguard? Gorthon scoffed. How bold.
Not bold. Suicidal,
Kael'tan corrected.
It's a human ship.
I leaned forward in my command chair, the metal creaking under my weight. A single ship? Against this fleet? Kael'tan adjusted the display, magnifying the approaching vessel. It was sleek and angular, dwarfed by the smallest of our cruisers. Its design was unremarkable, but something about its approach was unsettling. Too deliberate, too confident. Open a channel, I commanded. Let's hear their terms of surrender. The comms officer wavered. High Commander, they're not responding. The ship is accelerating. ETA 30 seconds. Prepare firing solutions, Gorthon barked, slapping the tactical console with a heavy claw.
We'll swat this insect out of the void.
The human ship moved like liquid fury, weaving through the debris field of an old asteroid belt. When our forward vessels fired, the beams missed by fractions. It was impossible. Their course corrections were too fast, too precise.
Impossible,
Gorthon muttered, his tendrils curling tight. The human ship opened fire, unleashing a single pulse of energy. It wasn't large, no blinding superweapon, but the result was catastrophic. The lead Kirin cruiser exploded, its core rupturing in a cascade of fire. Kael'tan stood frozen, his claws gripping the edge of the console.
That shot! No energy buildup, no warning.
They're not done, I said grimly. The human ship darted toward another cruiser, cutting its engines abruptly to avoid plasma fire. It glided like a predator in water, silent and calculating. Another pulse, another explosion. Panic rippled through the bridge as alarms blared. Officers barked into their headsets, trying to coordinate a response, but the human ship was everywhere and nowhere.
Get me firing solutions! Gorthon roared. Deploy drones!
Our drones launched, hundreds of sleek, automated killers swarming toward the ship. For a moment, I thought we had it. The human vessel was surrounded, boxed in, and then it deployed its own countermeasures. Drones, smaller but faster, weaving through ours like a whirlwind. Within seconds, the battlefield was a cloud of detonations, every Kieran drone obliterated. The bridge was silent, save for the hum of failing systems. Kelton's voice broke the stillness.
High Commander, we've lost 2 more cruisers. Their weaponry is surgical. They're targeting our cores.
My mandibles tightened. This was no fluke. How many losses?
4 cruisers,
Kelton replied, his voice a grim monotone.
Dozens of fighter squadrons. The enemy ship remains untouched.
It's a single ship! Gorthon exploded, slamming his fist against the console. This can't... This is reality, I snapped. Focus your rage on solutions, strategist. The second wave fared no better. I ordered the deployment of the Spearhead Division, vessels designed for close-quarters combat. They moved in tight formation, their armor thick, their lances deadly. The human ship should have struggled, but instead, it danced. It dipped under plasma fire, its engines flaring as it threaded through the spearheads like a needle. Kelton grimaced, his claws tapping the console nervously.
High Commander, the human ship is deploying decoys.
Counter them! Gorthon shouted, though his usual bravado sounded forced. The decoys weren't just distractions. They emitted false signals, mimicking the human ship perfectly. Our systems couldn't differentiate. The Spearhead Division fired wildly, destroying the decoys, but leaving themselves exposed. That's when the human ship struck, a barrage of torpedoes ripping through their formation. I gripped the arms of my chair as the Crythelia shuddered. A plasma beam had grazed the hull, a rare near hit from one of our panicked allies.
Friendly fire,
Kelton reported grimly.
Their tactics are causing chaos in our ranks.
I took a deep breath, forcing calm. Pull the fleet back. Consolidate. Kelton hesitated.
High Commander, that will...
It will prevent further losses. I cut him off. Do it. The fleet regrouped, battered and humiliated. The human ship lingered at the edge of sensor range, its presence a silent taunt. I stared at the display, my mind racing. This was no mere scouting vessel. Its crew wasn't improvising. They were executing a strategy, one tailored to dismantle us. Gorthon broke the silence, his voice low and seething. High Commander, we must retaliate with full force. Overwhelm them.
And lose more ships,
Kelton shot back.
You saw what they did. Numbers mean nothing if we can't hit them.
The tension between the two was palpable, but I had no patience for their bickering. Enough. We've underestimated the humans. That mistake will not happen again. Kelton straightened his mandibles, twitching in quiet determination.
What are your orders?
I stared at the tactical display, my claws tapping a slow rhythm against the console. The human ship had revealed something we had failed to see, a crack in our armor. They weren't fighting with brute strength. They were using intelligence, precision, and unpredictability. Send a message to the Council, I said. Request immediate reinforcements, and prepare the fleet. We'll study their tactics, adapt, and strike back. Kelton nodded, but there was doubt in his eyes. Gorthon said nothing, his tendrils coiled in frustration. As I stared into the endless void, the image of the human ship lingered in my mind. It was small, insignificant, and yet it had shattered our confidence. For the first time in decades, I felt fear. Log entry number 2. High Commander Vralok, Fleet Commander, Kieran Ascendancy. The mood aboard the Crythalia was poison. After hours of regrouping, my fleet drifted like a wounded predator licking its wounds. Reports trickled in. Losses, damage assessments, and the insidious whispers of doubt spreading among the crew. On the bridge, my officers moved with forced precision, their postures rigid, but their tendrils betraying unease. Kelton stepped forward, datapad clutched in his claws.
High Commander, the final casualty count is substantial. 11 cruisers destroyed, another 19 damaged. Drone reserves depleted by 40%.
His voice was steady, but his claws flexed nervously. Gorthon, standing nearby, scowled. This is a disgrace. 11 cruisers lost to one ship. How does this happen? Are our pilots fools? I rounded on him, letting my mandibles click with irritation. Enough! Assigning blame does nothing. Focus on the solution. He backed down, his tendrils curling defensively. I turned my attention back to Kael'tan. What is the enemy ship's status?
Undamaged,
Kael'tan admitted, his tone clipped.
They've moved to the asteroid field at the system's edge. Sensor readings are intermittent. Their stealth systems are unparalleled.
Unparalleled. The word grated against my pride. Stealth was a Kieran specialty, honed over centuries. That the humans had outdone us in our own domain was intolerable. Strategist Gorthon, I said, fixing him with a glare. If our pilots are not fools, prove it. Develop a counter-strategy. His tendrils twitched in irritation, but he nodded. I will. They cannot hide forever. Hours passed as the fleet repositioned, tightening our formation and setting traps. We deployed mines in concentric patterns around the asteroid field and stationed frigates at key checkpoints. Gorthon led the effort, his frustration fueling an unusual diligence. Meanwhile, I pored over the data with Kael'tan, analyzing every move the human ship had made.
They're not reacting to us,
Kael'tan observed, his claws tapping at the edge of the console.
Every maneuver feels premeditated, as though they know our tactics in advance.
Impossible, I muttered, though the thought gnawed at me. They've studied us. They must have. Intercepted transmissions or acquired intelligence. Nothing else explains their precision. Kael'tan hesitated.
Perhaps, but there's something else. Something beyond analysis. The crew is starting to talk, High Commander. They're calling it the Phantom.
Phantom? I echoed, disdain dripping from the word. Superstition. A distraction. Do not indulge it.
Yes, High Commander.
But the doubt in his voice lingered. High Commander, came a voice from the tactical station, cutting through the bridge's tense quiet. Movement in the asteroid field. The Phantom is emerging. Every eye turned to the holographic display. The human ship appeared as a faint blip, its trajectory erratic, almost playful. It darted between the outer mines, its path seemingly random.
Are they testing our defenses?
Kael'tan asked. Or mocking them, Gorthon growled. Activate the mines! The nearest cluster of mines surged to life, unleashing a web of energy bursts. The human ship veered sharply, narrowly avoiding the detonations. Its movements were impossibly fluid, like it anticipated every trap. Damn them! Gorthon barked. Launch fighters! Box them in! A swarm of Kieran fighters surged toward the Phantom, engines flaring as they formed a pincer. The human ship accelerated, weaving through the formation with uncanny precision. One by one, our fighters fell, some struck by pinpoint laser fire, others colliding in the chaos.
They're outmaneuvering us, Kael'tan reported grimly. Their tactics are disorienting.
I clenched my claws against the arms of my chair. Withdraw the fighters. Bring in the Spearhead Division. We'll end this in close quarters. The Spearhead ships, our most heavily armored vessels, advanced with grim purpose. Their energy lances glowed, ready to cut the Phantom apart. This time, there was no room for tricks. The asteroid field hemmed the human ship in, forcing it toward our blockade. Now we have them, Gorthon said, his tendrils coiled with anticipation. The Phantom hesitated, engines dimming as if assessing the situation. Then it moved. Not toward the blockade, but upward, skimming the edge of a massive asteroid. It disappeared from view for a moment, only to reemerge behind the Spearhead formation. Impossible! Gorthon roared. The human ship unleashed a volley of torpedoes, each striking with surgical precision. 2 spearhead ships erupted into flames, their armored hulls breached in moments. The remaining ships turned, lances firing wildly, but the Phantom was already gone, slipping back into the asteroid field.
"High Commander," Kelton said, his voice tight. "We've lost 4 more vessels. The enemy is retreating."
"Let them run," I growled. "Pull back and regroup. This isn't over." Back on Crithalia, the bridge buzzed with subdued chaos. Repairs were underway, and the crew moved with grim determination. Gorthon slammed a fist against the tactical console, his frustration boiling over.
"We can't keep letting them humiliate us," he spat. "Every move we make, they counter. It's as if they're toying with us."
"Enough, strategist," I snapped. "Your anger serves no one." Kelton stepped forward, his tone measured.
"High Commander, permission to speak freely?"
I nodded, though my patience wore thin.
"We've been reacting to them. Every time they strike, we respond, but we're always a step behind. We need to change the dynamic. Force them to react to us."
"And how do you propose we do that?" Gorthon sneered.
"They're faster, more agile. They dictate the battle." "Not if we give them a reason to hesitate,"
Kelton replied. He gestured to the display, highlighting the asteroid field.
"This terrain favors them, but if we use it to our advantage, detonate the mines en masse, destabilize the field, they'll have to move, and when they do, we'll be waiting."
I considered his proposal, my claws tapping a slow rhythm against the console. It was bold, destructive even, but it had merit. The Phantom relied on precision. Chaos might be its weakness. "Do it," I said. "Prepare the mines for detonation. Deploy frigates to the outer perimeter and inform the fleet. This ends now." The plan was set in motion. The mines, rigged to explode simultaneously, would create a shockwave powerful enough to scatter the asteroid field. Our ships formed a net around the perimeter, ready to intercept the Phantom as it fled. "Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The asteroid field erupted, a cascade of fire and debris spreading outward. The bridge trembled as the shockwave rippled through space. I watched the display, waiting for the Phantom to appear.
"There!"
Kelton shouted. The human ship emerged, engines flaring as it darted through the chaos. Our ships closed in, firing in coordinated bursts. This time, there was no escape. Or so I thought. Hi, Commander," the tactical officer said, his voice trembling. The Phantom has deployed something." The display flickered as dozens of small glowing objects appeared around the human ship. They moved erratically, emitting bursts of energy that disrupted our targeting systems.
"Decoys,"
Kelton said, his voice laced with frustration.
"They're scrambling our sensors."
"Focus fire," I ordered. "Don't let them—" Before I could finish, the Phantom turned. It wasn't fleeing. It was attacking. It wove through our formation, its weapons tearing through frigates with brutal efficiency. Our net disintegrated, ships falling one by one. When the Phantom finally retreated, the damage was catastrophic. I stood in the ruins of the bridge, surrounded by shattered consoles and wounded crew. Gorthon sat slumped against a bulkhead, his tendrils limp with defeat. Kelton approached, his expression grim.
"High Commander," he said quietly. "The fleet is in disarray. Morale is deteriorating."
I stared at the tactical display, now a sea of red where our ships had fallen. The Phantom was gone, its precise location unknown. We underestimated them. I admitted, the words bitter on my tongue. But this is far from over. Kelton nodded, though his posture betrayed his doubts. As he turned to leave, I stared into the void, my mind racing. The Phantom was no mere vessel. It was a weapon of fear, wielded with terrifying precision. And it was winning. Log entry number 3, High Commander Vralok, Fleet Commander, Kieran Ascendancy. The corridors of the Crathalia were subdued, the usual hum of activity replaced by an eerie quiet. Officers avoided one another's eyes, their tendrils slack and lifeless. Every corner of the ship reeked of doubt. I summoned Fleet Morale Officer Prexen to address the issue before it festered further. Prexen entered my chambers, his crimson carapace dulled and his usually firm posture drooping. Even he, whose role was to inspire confidence, showed signs of fraying under the pressure. "High Commander," Prexen began, his mandibles clicking nervously. "The crew is strained. They whisper of invincibility, of ghosts." "Ghosts?" I hissed, my claws gouging shallow lines into the armrest of my chair. "Are we warriors or frightened spawnlings?" "They believe the human ship is unnatural," Prexen continued carefully. "Many say it's an autonomous weapon. Others think it's some form of psychic warfare. None believe we can defeat it." My mandibles tightened. "It's a ship, a tool wielded by clever adversaries. Our people have no place for such cowardly myths." "I agree, High Commander," Prexen said, inclining his head. "But the whispers persist. If we don't act decisively, they will grow louder." I ordered the deployment of Operative Zal Rith, the Ascendancy's foremost intelligence agent. Zal Rith was unflinching, his angular figure as sharp as his mind. He reported to the bridge with a cold efficiency that had earned him both respect and fear among his peers. "High Commander," Zal Rith said, his voice a low rasp, "I've reviewed the fleet's data logs and scouted the human communications spectrum. Their patterns are highly encrypted, but there are irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" Kelton asked, stepping forward. "Intentional leaks," Zalrith replied. His segmented arms moved over to the holographic display, highlighting snippets of intercepted transmissions. "They've left traces, just enough for us to notice. I believe it's deliberate." "A trap?" I growled. "Perhaps," Zalrith said, "but it's also an opportunity. If we follow these threads carefully, we may glean insight into their larger strategy." I stared at the display. The intercepted fragments were maddeningly incomplete. Mention of predictive models, coordinated counterattacks, and something called Vanguard Directive. It was tantalizing, but also dangerous. If the humans had left this trail for us to follow, it could lead to ruin. But if Zalrith was right, ignoring it could cost us even more. "Proceed," I said, "but cautiously. I won't tolerate further losses." Zalrith's efforts bore fruit faster than expected. By piecing together the fragmented data, he identified the presence of a human fleet stationed deeper within the system. At its head was Fleet Commander Adrian Blake, a name unfamiliar to me, but spoken with reverence in the intercepted transmissions. "Fleet Commander Blake?" Kelton said, frowning. "Is he significant?" "Extremely," Zalrith replied. "A decorated strategist. His tactics in the outer colonies have been studied by military academies across the galaxy." "And we've walked into his web," Gorthon muttered darkly. "This entire campaign is his design." "It seems so," Zalrith agreed. "The Phantom is no rogue agent. It's part of a larger plan to dismantle our fleet piecemeal." I convened my senior officers for an emergency strategy session. The room was heavy with tension as we reviewed Zalrith's findings. Kelton stood stiffly by my side, while Gorthon paced like a caged predator. Prexen lingered at the back, observing silently. "Their predictive capabilities are extraordinary," Zalrith explained, gesturing to the holographic display. "They've anticipated our every move, not just tactically, but
strategically.
How is that possible? Gorthan demanded. No algorithm is that precise.
It's not just algorithms, Zalrith said. The humans have a scientist, Dr. Layla Nadir. Her expertise in adaptive predictive modeling is unparalleled. She's the architect of their strategy.
Gorthan snorted. A scientist? We're losing to calculations?
More than calculations, Zalrith corrected. Dr. Nadir's models are dynamic. They evolve with each engagement, learning from our responses and feeding that data back into their system.
Then we starve it, I said. Deny them further data. Halt all offensive operations and fortify our position.
It's a start, Zalrith said, though his tone was cautious. But the humans won't wait for us to regroup. They'll press the advantage.
As predicted, the humans struck swiftly. Small skirmishes flared across the system, testing our defenses. Each engagement revealed another layer of their strategy. The Phantom led these attacks, its agility and precision eroding our formations. But it wasn't alone.
Their fleet is moving, Kelton reported, his voice tight. Blake's flagship, the Indomitable, has entered the system. They're positioning for a decisive strike.
Let them come, I said, though my confidence wavered. If they want a decisive battle, we'll give them one. The final confrontation was inevitable. Blake's fleet emerged from hyperspace, a formation of sleek warships bristling with weaponry. They outnumbered us, but more troubling was their coordination. Every ship moved with purpose, a symphony of precision that contrasted sharply with the growing chaos among my ranks. As the fleets clashed, the Phantom reappeared. It darted through the chaos, striking key targets with unerring accuracy. Our defenses buckled, our formations crumbled. I watched helplessly as the Crithalia shuddered under sustained fire. "They're dismantling us!" Gorthon roared, his tendrils flailing. "We need to retreat!" "No," I said through clenched mandibles. "This ends here." Zalrith approached, his demeanor calm despite the carnage around us.
"High Commander, I have a proposal. If we target Dr. Nadir's operations, we may disrupt their predictive models."
"And how do you propose we reach her?"
Kelton asked bitterly. "The Phantom guards their key assets."
Zalrith's mandibles twitched in a rare show of uncertainty.
"It's a risk, but if we focus all our resources on breaching their flagship, we may have a chance."
"All our resources?" Prexen said, his voice wavering. "The crew won't follow a suicide mission."
"Then I'll do it myself," Zalrith said, his tone resolute.
The plan was desperate, but we had no other options. While the fleet engaged the humans, a small strike team led by Zalrith infiltrated the Indomitable. Reports were sparse, but his final transmission confirmed contact with Dr. Nadir.
"She's more than a scientist," Zalrith said, his voice distorted by interference. "She's the heart of their fleet. If we can..."
The transmission cut off, and moments later the Indomitable retaliated with a fury we hadn't anticipated. Whatever Zalrith had hoped to achieve, it wasn't enough. The Kieran fleet was shattered. In the aftermath, I sat alone in the shattered remains of the Cruthalia's bridge. Around me, the void was littered with the wreckage of my fleet. Blake's forces had withdrawn, leaving only silence in their wake. Prexen approached hesitantly, his carapace dull with exhaustion. "High Commander, what are your orders?" I stared at the tactical display, now a blank expanse of black.
"Survive," I said hollowly.
"And remember." Log Entry 4. High Commander Vralok, Fleet Commander, Kieran Ascendancy. The bridge was a graveyard. My once pristine command center, with its glowing consoles and the hum of controlled power, was now a shattered husk. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid tang of burnt circuitry. The Crithalia, my proud flagship, groaned as its structural integrity faltered. Around me, the bridge crew worked with mechanical desperation. Their movements betrayed the truth we all knew but did not speak. This was the end. I stared at the tactical display, its once detailed readouts now fractured and flickering. The remnants of my fleet were scattered across the void, broken and burning. Against all odds, the humans had reduced us to this, a proud armada gutted and humiliated. "Survivors report," I commanded, my voice rasping through the bridge-wide comms. A broken response came after a long silence. "This is Korvac, Vanguard Division. Barely alive. What are your orders, High Commander?" Korvac, one of our most unyielding warriors, sounded beaten. His tone reflected the truth I could not admit aloud. We were finished. "Regroup," I ordered. "Prepare to fight. This is not over." But even as I said it, the words tasted hollow. The humans had withdrawn briefly, likely to regroup and deliver the final blow. My thoughts raced, cycling between despair and fury. How had it come to this? The Phantom had been a specter, haunting us, but it was no longer alone. The human fleet was now fully revealed, a coordinated, precise force led by their Admiral Serena Holt. "High Commander," my second Kael'ton said as he approached me cautiously. His posture was hesitant, his claws flexing nervously. "The humans are preparing their final assault. Their formations, they're flawless." I turned to him, my mandibles twitching with irritation. "No formation is flawless. Find the weakness. Exploit it." Kael'ton hesitated. His silence was damning. The humans struck like a thunderstorm. Railguns lit the void, missiles streaking toward our crippled ships with unerring precision. The Crithalia shuddered under the assault, and the tactical display flared red with warnings. "They're pressing hard on our forward line," Kael'ton shouted, gripping the console. I watched as our remaining ships struggled to reposition. The humans moved with a cold efficiency that mocked our once vaunted discipline. Where was our legendary precision? Where was our resolve? "Order the Vanguard to counterstrike," I growled. "Force them to react." "They're already reacting," Kael'ton muttered bitterly. "Every move we make is anticipated." I had underestimated their commander. Admiral Holt was no mere tactician. She wielded her fleet like a surgeon's blade, each strike cutting deeper into our defenses. Reports of her strategies had reached me weeks ago, but I had dismissed them as propaganda. Now the truth was undeniable. "Hail Korvac," I ordered. The comm channel crackled. High Commander?" Korvac's voice was strained. "You and your soldiers are to hold the forward line. Do not allow them to break through." There was a pause. "Understood." I knew I was sending him to his death. The Crithalia rocked violently, sparks raining from the ceiling as another missile impacted the hull. "Hull breach on decks 14 and 15, an officer shouted. "Seal them," I ordered coldly. My focus remained on the tactical display, though it offered no solace. The humans were relentless. They fought like they had nothing to lose, each maneuver tightening the noose around us. "High Commander," Kael'ton said quietly, his voice trembling. We can't hold." I turned to him, my mandibles flaring. "We are Kirin. We hold." The humans boarded us next. A team of Marines breached the lower decks, cutting through our defenses with brutal efficiency. Reports filtered in of firefights, of desperate last stands. "Corporal Michael Drake," I muttered as his name appeared in the reports. One of their foot soldiers, a mere human, was leading the charge against my command center. "They're coming for you," Kael'ton warned. "Let them come," I replied. My claws gripped the armrests of my chair. If this was to be my end, I would face it as a Kieran should. The door to the command center exploded inward. Smoke and debris filled the air as human marines stormed in, their weapons raised. I remained seated, my mandibles twitching in defiance. A human soldier, Drake, moved cautiously toward me, his rifle trained on my chest. Behind him, his comrades fanned out, securing the room. "You fought well," I said, my voice low and even, "but you'll regret sparing me." Drake didn't respond. His rifle remained steady, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. The battle outside continued to rage. Through the shattered viewport, I saw the Resolute advancing, its weapons firing in coordinated bursts. Admiral Holt's fleet was unstoppable now, their formations flawless. The tactical display on the bridge flickered one last time before going dark, its final image a sea of red. Korvac's voice crackled over the comms one last time. "High Commander, they've broken through. There's nothing left." I closed my eyes, the weight of failure setting over me like a shroud. "Survive," I told him. "And remember." The channel went silent. The humans didn't kill me. They restrained me, binding my claws as they secured the bridge. Drake stood over me, his expression unreadable. Outside, the human fleet moved among the wreckage, their victory complete. The Kieran Ascendancy's greatest fleet was no more. And I, High Commander Vralok, was reduced to a prisoner. Final log entry. To the Kieran Ascendancy. Do not underestimate them again.